Welcome to this convening, which is on the audit for the implementation of our Constitution.
On 5th of August 2010, Kenyans held a referendum on whether or not to adopt the new constitution, then the proposed constitution. So with a vote of nearly 70%, the answer was a resounding yes. The constitution then became operational on 27th August 2010. I believe we all remember the sheer joy exhibited by the huge crowd present at Uhuru Gardens to usher in the new constitution. There was a sense of jubilation. There were miniature Kenyan flags flying everywhere. People were singing, Mkenya, daima mimi Mkenya. There was a real sense of hope for change and a better future for Kenyans. We have opportunity now to reflect on where we are 9 years later, close to 9 years later. Particularly on the background of calls by the political class to re-examine certain provisions of the Constitution. But more importantly for us, these discussions are useful to take stock of how far we have come in honoring the spirit and letter of the Constitution, and once again to become energized and invigorated to ensure that the Constitution meets the ends for which we passed it on 5th of August 2010. So the discussion today will focus on 5 areas: national values and principles of governance, electoral integrity and elected members of parliament, devolution, gender principle, and constitutional commissions.
Why is it that we have so quickly degenerated into the system that we have? And I think we need to give a lot of attention to that, because most of the things that are a part of the national values have been violated again and again and again, as has already been shown by my colleague. So I think perhaps we should focus a little bit on why is it that with so much support for Constitution, with brilliant Kenyans that we are, struggled and so on, and a lot of expertise, a lot of skills committed to this Constitution, we are now meeting here to say what went wrong.
For us as the council, I think the first thing we need to do is to celebrate the fact that we have been able to implement this constitution for the last almost 9 years now. I think that is a point at which we start. We must celebrate that fact. We must celebrate the fact that we were able to devolve power and responsibilities and resources in a span of 3 years. And that devolution is working. So I think from that point of view, for us at the council, the biggest question that we're asking ourselves is how do we reform the Constitution so that we strengthen the enabling environment for devolution? We have had devolution the last 6 years. So what is good that has happened, and what are the legal gaps and constitutional gaps that we need to take into account as we are having this discourse about amending the Constitution? And we must always remember that devolution is about taking development to the lowest levels and to the grassroots. So how do we enable this through the Constitution? And we are always reminded about the successes of devolved governments. There are counties that have performed cesarean sections for the first time since independence. There are counties that have performed brain surgeries for the first time since independence. There are counties that have tarmacked roads for the first time since independence. So there are great strides that we've experienced in terms of health, in terms of early education, in terms of agriculture, in terms of water, in terms of roads, and all the other functions that counties have been bestowed with.
In the paper, Yash concludes that despite the weaknesses exhibited in the devolved system of governance in practice, a 2018 Ipsos Synovate poll found that 84% of Kenyans support devolution, and at the coast, that number was 90%. He also notes that counties are learning and improving. And his final word on this is that devolution remains controversial, but the best option we have as a country is to make it work.
Who remembers when Kivuitu, the late, said he doesn't know who won the election? Who remembers that? You know, I was watching that on TV and I was like, what? What do you mean you don't know who won the election?
Elections in Kenya and many parts of the world do continue to be plagued by opacity, corruption, disenfranchisement, and the lack of accountability. But these issues are very clearly the result of a failure to implement the constitutional standards we already have. There are some deep-seated, ingrained problems with electoral processes, many of which date back to pre-Kriegler days. These show us that despite a new constitution and a host of new implementing laws, there is little political will to change the status quo.
According to me, one of the biggest issue that we need to cure, first, let me say, we do not need a referendum. We do not need to change the constitution to be able to address the problems that we have in our elections. The laws, as Sima says, are very, very clear. For me, the mischief and the bad manners, I would call it the axis, there's a time the executive came up with the axis of evil, the civil society. It's the axis of evil. But this is the axis of mischief and bad manners, according to me. Political parties, number one, for lack of a democracy, people using them as special purposes, vehicles for getting into office, and then IBC, the second part of that, and I'm saying that because of that perception of lack of independence, where we are seeing, even the commissioner, Nasima said, there was a question of even the commissioners themselves being split in the run-up to the elections. So the indications that there could be interference in the IBC, despite the fact that they are protected, lack of stakeholder engagement in that, and then, of course, lack of institutional memory. Remember, it is important for also to inform Kenyans that since the advent of multi-party elections, we have had 6 multi-party elections and we have had 6 commissions. Sorry. So there's no trust in the institution. And the third pillar of that axis of mischief, in my view, is the executive. Because of the constant meddling, you can also extend it to what has become a civil society correct phrasing of the deep state, affecting and interfering in the processes of the commission itself.
Thank you very much.
As a commission, we have done our best in terms of ensuring that our elections have integrity. And I want to go back to what was presented, especially on the register part. For any credible election to take place, then we must have a credible register. And that is what IBC has been trying to do. And that is what we have done. Though listening to my colleagues here, we seem to still have a gap in terms of a credible register. That is what they're saying. But I wish to express that as a commission, we have always ensured that we register all eligible citizens in this country and those who present themselves for registration. Remember that registering as a voter is voluntary. You cannot force any citizen to come and register. But again, we also have a problem of the documents that IBC must use as per the Constitution for you to be registered as a voter. We have the national ID or the use of a passport. Now, you realize that these documents are not issued by IEBC, but they are issued by another government department. And therefore, sometimes we may not really answer questions on when IDs delay and we are not able to issue our voters with registration. So that one really is also a challenge to the Electoral Commission.
Without taking sides, I want to support IEBC in saying that it's a very delicate balance as an independent commission to come between being mentioned as an activist and also being impartial in making decisions. As a matter of fact, national government, in doing its audit of the implementation of the Constitution, cited IEBC as one of the only independent commissions that has managed to remain independent by the virtue of the fact, by the virtue of the fact that they actually went to court, and was the first commission in the whole of Africa, or in fact in the entire world, to actually challenge an executive presidential election. So in just the fact that that process happened in the space of Kenya, just the fact that it happened, I'm not going to the merits of the matters, was one of the ways that they were trying to test the independency of the commissions. But let me start by saying this. Of course, yeah, I'm just saying that this is, it's not my opinion, I'm just giving you information.
In a space like this, you've been invited to come and participate, to provide the critical information, and to be able to provide balanced and well thought out assessment of performance of the institutions that you represent. It's worse when you consider that there are lives that were lost, there are populations that were displaced, and this country remains fractured because of the sins of your actions or the lack of thereof.
I just want to check. Anybody loves their MP in here? Anybody? Yeah, that's a sober reality of where we find ourselves in. Our democracy can only be as strong as the people we elect, and key to this are the parliamentarians who we have given delegated power. And to me, from where we sit, they are the weakest link, because everything we have given ourselves as a people in the Constitution, they were meant to give life to, but that has not been the case.
I remember I'm seeing Professor Uma in the crowd, and I remember there was a time that we were busy running around trying to teach people about the Constitution before it was passed. And I actually feel a bit fraudulent, because I remember telling women, "Wanawake oye! Wanawake oye!" Right? Because we went to women and we convinced women, and we said, women, you need to pass this Constitution because it is the only way in which we can guarantee you equality of opportunity and equality of rights. So this is in reflecting in that time, and now we're in 2019. The question is, have we achieved this promise of gender equality, the vision of our forefathers and our foremothers, the people who worked so tirelessly to put this Constitution together, to insert language to include non-discrimination, equality, equity, to ensure affirmative action. So all those things were meticulously put in the Constitution, but yet we find ourselves in 2019 still talking about the 2/3 gender principle and other matters concerning women's rights.
Today, if we have an accident of more than 40 people, we see it as a national crisis. But when 40 women die, there's silence about it. Is it even about time we ask that we need a monument with all the women who've died, so that the country can be able to recognize, yes, we have lost 40 women or more than 40 women, but also is a turning point as a country, that this is only going to remain in the annals of history, that we are not going to lose any other woman who is killed in this country, because we need protection, we need to be supported, we need to be able to work, we need healthy relationship, but also talk about it not just as a pass-by, that any other day, more women continue to die. They continue to be highlighted in the media, and the media has really been able to follow up on the matter. But as a country, we must be able to move forward. So thank you, and I challenge each and every one of you, because I believe I have power, we have collective power, I have a voice, we have collective voice, and we can be able to take an action at a personal level, but also as we mobilize to be able to have as many people as possible to be able to take action.
This is the time when women in large numbers should join political parties, when women in large numbers should start getting the skills that they need to run, and when women in large numbers should start demanding to be fielded by their political parties. Secondly, how much money is going into the pockets of women who are the large, small-scale farmers, the biggest, the majority? What are we doing to influence the Ministry of Agriculture and the counties to get more women benefiting from the agricultural funds in this country? How are we getting more women participating in the health sector? How are we getting more women in the TVET institutions, which is our current focus, that is building the necessary skills that are going to get this country to grow economically? So I would urge the women's movement to get away from parliament and waambie parliament kaeni na hizo viti, and then we strategize to come and take all those seats.
What would happen if we didn't have the commissions? Have you ever thought about that? If we didn't have the and you may think this is not very different. If we didn't have an IEBC, who would run elections? In most countries that don't have something like the IEBC, it's going to be the civil servants. But of course, in Kenya, it would probably be the politicians. The JSC, if we didn't have the Judicial Service Commission, then judges would be appointed by politicians or judges, or a combination of both, which is, again, happens in other countries. If we didn't have the Human Rights Commissions, anything like the sort of work they do would have to be done by courts. It wouldn't be done because people can't afford to go to courts. These were set up in order to provide remedies for people in a way that was cheaper, simpler, more approachable than going to court. The Commission on Revenue Allocation, if we didn't have that, it would all be left to the politicians. If we didn't have the Salaries and Remuneration Commission, it would all ultimately be left to Parliament. So before you start trying to throw out the particular baby of the commissions, please give a little thought to the bathwater, or the other way around. Before you throw out the bathwater, think a bit about the baby.
I want you to think and consider the Office of the Auditor General, the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights are not new. They were just given their constitutional independence, which is a very good parameter. However, if you look at the roles of those two institutions, one audits and tracks the money. The other audits and tracks the human lives and experiences of people. One is given a budget of 5 billion. The other is given a budget of 380 million. So does it mean that following money, auditing money, is more important than auditing the significance and the quality of our lives? If you look again, finally, at the end, when you look at the budget-making process, within the parameters of government, there is a box written human rights. That box, as far as I know, has never been ticked off.
So if you want executive tappings, why would you then want independence? And, there are some good commissions, and of course, on this matter, sometimes it's difficult to give open comment. Commissioner Jedida, for example, is my teacher of many years, and they've done a good job. But if you look at the commission, a national commission now, and at Maina's time, there's been a shift a bit of love of these state trappings also at that time. So what do you expect? So you have to be able to commit a particular level of class suicide and abandon the state, its culture, its trappings, and then you can assert the independence. But if you want the state trappings, you want the salute, you want the bodyguard, you want a big car, you want a red carpet, then it goes with loss of independence. So you have to also ensure that you really go for this independence by going bare.
The question is, when will Kenyans look at themselves in the mirror and practice what they preach, including in civil society? We say we don't want corruption. Corruption happens in civil society. It happens in government. When will Kenyans look themselves in the mirror and challenge the person inside that mirror to uphold, defend, and protect the Constitution?
We do not want our Constitution messed with for their short-term political gains, because this elite only moves with short-term gains in mind. They are not looking at the long-term interests of Kenyans. If they were, we would have very, very much better results than we now have. This country is in a crisis because of their mismanagement. The only interest that the political elite has in amending the Constitution is to deal with their succession crisis, okay? They are misusing the Constitution in order to manipulate a result that they want so that they can keep themselves eternally in power at the expense of the people of Kenya. And we would be stupid if we were to jump onto that bandwagon and think that we can influence that process in a positive way for Kenyans.
The argument seems to be that while the Constitution may not be perfect, and it may not be realistic to hope that at some point it will be perfect. In our discussion around the Constitution, there seems to be a major appropriation of blame on the people that are supposed to implement it. So the blame seems to be a lot on the institutions and the individuals that we've mandated to implement our Constitution. So that will be an observation that I think is a pattern from the presentations that we've had today. And partly which flows with the central argument is we've had research papers presented before us, just part of the research papers, about 5 of them. As I say, there are about 20 papers, and eventually they'll be compiled into a publication. Can they inform our debate as we go out, so that as we discuss on matters relating to the Constitution, not necessarily in the context of the proposed changes or change to the Constitution, can we try and base it on some of those findings from the research? And if at all any point or any point of argument that we may have is based on good evidence, then that can carry the day. But as it stands, it doesn't look like the proponents of certain changes.
Rais apite, lakini kwanza mimi nilifanya manifesto, bado mwananchi hawezi afford kubai rais apike. Rais apike ndo rais apite, inakuaje miaka 4 baadaye bado rais apiki. Rais apiki na hata baada miaka 4 ya nduru bado rais afiki. Rais afiki na ni mwaka 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 naelekea 7. Eti bado mwananchi anangoja nini? Rais afike.
Uhuru wetu wa Kenya, uhuru wetu wa Kenya, tupiganie katiba yetu wa Kenya, katiba yetu wa Kenya, tutekeleze. Wamama wetu wa Kenya, wamama wetu wa Kenya, tuwatetee. Vijana wetu wa Kenya, vijana wetu wa Kenya.